and Coconut Grove.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming this evening to this gathering here. It seems like we were just here a few months ago, and in fact we were. My name is Mel Meinhardt. I'm the MC for your event this evening, and this event is the culmination of work by a number of organizations in Coconut Grove and outside. I'd like to give a special shout out to the League of Women Voters with whom we are partnered this evening, as well as all of the neighborhood associations and homeowners associations up and down Coconut Grove. And we throw a mantle around ourselves and call ourselves One Grove of it. I would like to give a special shout out here for the professionals that are in the room. Let me introduce our moderators, please. Chuck Strauss. Chuck Strauss is a veteran journalist of the Miami Herald and now serves as the assistant director of the Lee Kaplan School of Journalism at Florida International University. Also with us is Dawn Finnefrock. Dawn is part of the Pulitzer Prize winning team from the Miami Herald, and both of them have decades of experience in covering Miami and South Florida issues. So we're very privileged that they should help guide this. They have also had access to all your questions as well as their own independent research, and they will work to spin all of those things together.
Thank you, Mel. We're going to start with opening statements. There's an order that was randomly selected, and each of the candidates will have 90 seconds. Before we start, though, let me say thank you for being here. Thank you for being a candidate. Your choice gives us choices, and I think that makes democracy stronger. So thank you. So the first up is Alicia Kosick.
Good evening. Miami's overdevelopment and natural environment cannot coexist. Miami cannot be classified as a first-rate city as we sit here tonight, 0.3 miles away from the West Grove, with one of the widest income disparities in the United States. And we certainly cannot be led by a local government that lacks ethical discipline. My name is Alicia Kosick. Many of you may know me as a small business owner called The Polished Coconut, a sustainable design firm and a historic preservation firm located in the West Grove. Some of you may know me also as the architectural designer who restored La Brisa for Ransom Everglades. And some of you may know me as an innovator behind the horticulture therapy gardens, the compost station at 3536 Williams Avenue. I also established a communal refrigerator at our storefront at 3600 Grand Avenue, and we feed 40 people a day throughout the course of the day. Over 3 years, 40,000.
15 seconds.
Oh, 15 seconds? Yeah. So let me wrap that up. So I am the mother of 4. I'm a proud parent of a child in the United States military at the Coast Guard Academy. I'm here to serve D2, and I look forward to sharing this evening with you.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Torres.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. First and foremost, I want to say a sincere thank you and gratitude to the Coconut Grove Spotlight and the Women's Club for hosting us and getting the opportunity and knowing everyone that's here today. My name is James Torres, and I'm here because I believe we deserve better. Our city is at crossroads with the corruptions and the scandals that are currently plaguing our district and our city. I stand before you today in a clear conscience to share with you that our current commission has failed us. They were put in with all these ideas and the ideology that we would do better. Well, nothing has been done better. That's why I stand here once again since February to tell you that this is our community and we need to take it back. I serve as president of the Downtown Neighbors Association, where I represent over 30,000 individuals. This is something that I love doing for the community, sharing ideas and receiving feedback before we take actions. Actions that require us to roll our sleeves and face the corruptions and scandals at City Hall. Once again, my name is James Torres, and I'm glad to be here with you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Next up, Mr. Pardo.
My name is Damian Pardo, and for 35 years, when no one was watching, I was giving of my time, effort, skill, and money to make the community better. I'm a first-time candidate for public office, and I believe that we can do better, and I can help. I'm determined to root out corruption. I'm determined to bring back the basic services to us, the residents, and to empower the residents. My campaign doesn't take any special interest money. My campaign doesn't take any political endorsements. We value the endorsement of Michael Putney, the distinguished journalist. In 1993, I founded SAVE, and in 1998, we passed the Human Rights Ordinance. That protected all minorities from discrimination, but it also listed LGBTQ people. In 2015, I founded Forward Miami, and we created the Gay Ocho Festival, which uplifted Little Havana. So change is possible, but change is not possible when there's silence on the dais in the face of corruption and wrongdoing. I'd like to be your advocate, and I hope you support me.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Leal.
Good evening. It is a pleasure to be before you again. As many of you know, I ran in the February election, ended up second place. Your support for me was crucial. Since then, you and I have spoken at your door, during lunches, during meetings. I know the issues. I've been involved. For those who do not know me, let me share with you a little bit of the facts of who I am. I'm a practicing attorney. I graduated from Duke University. I'm also the president of my condo association for the last 5 years. I'm a father of two, Sebastian and Gabriela. In addition, I have extensive experience working at local government. When I was at the local government, I served as a general counsel for an elected official. In that position, I passed legislation to prevent the Playhouse from being destroyed. I also passed legislation to work on preserving historic sites. And last but not least, to some of you that are in the audience, I walked shoulder to shoulder to prevent things that were being done to the Planning and Zoning Board to prevent their ability to actually properly review and legislate over our special projects that are before that board. My legal changes made a big difference. My motivation of running is simple. We need someone that knows the system, can build on that system, and is able and caring for our system. I ask for your vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leal. Next up, Ms. Tasker.
Hello and good evening, everyone. Last February, I stood on this stage and I called out the government gangsters. This time I'm standing on the stage, the first domino has fallen because I didn't sit silent. I went to City Hall, I called out the corruption, I advocated for us as citizens because we are in dire straits. Our city is almost bankrupt. I am a business owner and leader. I am the only one that seems to be able to read a budget, to advocate for a budget, to ask for the line items in the budget, and transparency within our government, which we are not getting at this very point in time. So I ask for your vote. I ask for you to please review my platform at Christie4Miami.com and see my skills, see my skill set. I started out in life underneath an Army attaché. I developed my first historic property and saved a historic home very much like the Playhouse in Suwanee, Georgia. I hold a proclamation for that city, for the legislation that was created there. I then began to take my resources and my knowledge to engineers, architects, interior design firms. I teach at colleges, universities, both advertising, design, and architecture throughout the United States and abroad. So again, my name is Christy Tasker, and I look forward to being your next commissioner.
Thank you, Ms. Tasker. Commissioner?
Good evening. My name is Sabina Cobo. I'm your current City of Miami District 2 Commissioner. I decided to run for office February 27th because I've been part of Coconut Grove for over 30 years. My family has lived in this neighborhood for over 30 years. I'm raising my 3 children, my cat and my dog in this neighborhood, and we need better quality of life. A little bit about my history. I'm a former news reporter. I started with NBC Telemundo when I was 19. From there, I worked for CNN, for many radio stations, for print. I had a city issue op-ed column that was published on the Miami Herald in Spanish every Sunday for 15 years. I'm a published author, fiction and fiction. I went to Florida International University for journalism and political science. And I can assure you that the past 6 months have been the best months of my life. Because even though I right now don't get enough time with my family, I can assure you that I was actually preparing to be a public servant all of my life. As a journalist, you get to see it all. But when you love your community, when you love where your children are growing, when you have passion for the issues that we'll be tackling, for example, affordable housing, historic preservation, public safety, a better tree canopy. I was actually recruited by the Department of Agriculture under Nikki Fried to be a spokesperson, and that actually inspired me to be your city commissioner. I look forward to serving for whatever time you guys decide, and of course I would love your vote on November 7th to be reelected. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Castro?
Good evening. I'm Michael Castro. I'm not, I've said this before, I'm not really a politician. I'm not really a attorney. And to be quite honest, I'm not much of a public speaker. But I got into this situation because I'm just a homeowner in Coconut Grove, like many of you out there. And I like working on these Bahamian wood frame cottages. And with that comes dealing with the public works and the unsafe structure and the building department and all the other departments in the city of Miami. And with that comes the exposure of abuse of power. So that's what I was trying to address back in 2016 when I ran against Xavier Suarez. Now, as a first-time candidate, I was able to secure 30% of the vote. Having the last name Castro didn't really help me, but I consider it a small achievement. Well, that being said, I live right across the street from the farmer's market, and the white picket fence. Anybody's welcome to come by so we could discuss the situation, or if you want to help me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Castro. That brings us to the living room segment that Mel described earlier. We've got a series of topics we'd like to open a discussion on and get your thoughts and suggestions. And first up is, no surprise, City Hall corruption. So something is rotten in the city of Miami. A sitting commissioner has been arrested and removed from office. The mayor is under investigation for accepting cash from a developer who sought his help at City Hall. The city attorney has been accused of real estate fraud, and a second commissioner has been slapped with a $63.5 million verdict for defaming and harassing 2 Little Havana businessmen. Even by Miami standards, the cloud of corruption over City Hall is shocking, and we've been here before. The Herald has called for charter changes, and political observers are calling for total cleansing. So, and I'd like to start with you, Mr. Pardo. How do we fix this mess? You have 60 seconds.
I think there's been a long culture that has been going on in history, and this is the moment to address it. I would love to see a public corruption unit established that's independent and that can do investigations. I would love to see us have campaign finance reform as well, like the one in Miami Beach that was made into law. And I believe it really takes a whistleblower protection as well and an ordinance. So I think a combination of those things, plus from the very top, giving it the kind of importance, can start helping to change the culture.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next candidate. We're going to give you guys, not all, but some of you guys a chance to talk, and then we're going to move on to different subjects because we're in the living room. Keep your answers tight, if you will. And, you know, if you want to comment on somebody else's comment, you're welcome to do that as well because we're having a conversation, okay? So we'll move on next to Christy Tasker. Do you have any thoughts about how to honest up this dishonest city?
Yes. First of all, I've actually gone to our police because our police know a lot of what's going on within the city and asked them to please make their reports to U.S. Marshals. And I did that back in February. So U.S. Marshals and Florida Department of Law Enforcement, because many of them were reporting to Florida Department of Law Enforcement, who is under the direction and under the thumb of Alex Diaz de la Portilla. So that is something that I've highly recommended for people to double report, not just to our police department. And then the next thing that I look forward is for us to have a sheriff, because the sheriff is actually the one that's in control of our entire county. And right now that is actually in the mayor's office, which I do not approve of that at all. I know that Miami has had a sheriff's department in the past, but it's not been a real sheriff's department. It was actually under the leadership of politicians, if you look at the history of the Miami mayor.
Well, now, just to clarify, the county is going to get a sheriff, right?
The county, correct,
But the
yes.
city has no plans to get a sheriff. Should it have its own sheriff?
No, it should not. The county sheriff is actually over the region of the city as well. So right now, the city of Miami has nowhere to really go other than the Miami Police Department that is underneath the leadership of Miami Commission, whereas we should be able to go to a sheriff that's over the entire county that has no connections to politicians whatsoever.
Thank you.
You want me to go? You want to go?
Yeah, let me jump in. Mr. Torres, Mr. Pardo mentioned campaign finance reform, and specifically the rules that are in fact over on Miami Beach, some of the toughest in South Florida. But there are questions about how well those are working. Do you think campaign finance is the direction that we need to go in first, or do you have other ideas?
I have other ideas, but I do want to double back on one thing. You mentioned almost a third of the city commission that is under some type of conversation or cloud. Vicky Mendez, take a vacation. Just like that. Joe Carollo, take a vacation. Because if you don't have someone that's front and center, you're going to have a problem. At the end of the day, these are all facts. So I would, from day one, turn around and ask all of these individuals, take your vacation, I'm sure you have enough time, and move out until these investigations are cleared out. Because if that's not done, you're going to keep having the same issues that you're currently having, the repeating revolving door. Now, the campaign reform issue is very simple. Anyone that wants to do business in the city of Miami as a lobbyist, as an attorney, or whatever the case is, you use the front door. You do not go through the side door, you not a back door, you do not. These are part of the conversations that we need to start having front and center, because there's a lot of distrust by our voters in our district. So complicated in terms of harvesting and bringing things. It's amazing to me how Miami Beach is always at the forefront of some of these initiatives, and we lag behind. Well, why do we lag behind? Because the people at that office are the ones that are not allowing the change. Very simple.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Covo, you've been around for a very interesting few months in terms of corruption. How would you get rid of it?
So let me tell you what we're doing to actually win the trust of our constituents. We're an open office. We do open office hours every Wednesday from 3 to 6. We actually are transparent. We talk to our constituents. We bring mobile offices to the different neighborhoods within the district, and we do it twice a month. So we are actually trying to approach our citizens in the best transparent way. That's what I promised when I was campaigning. The other thing that we can do, of course, we need to make sure that our government is accountable. It's embarrassing what's going on City Hall. And when you're sitting there, seeing a commissioner that sits next to you arrested, that's when you say, oh my God, Miami cannot be on the map for this situation. I think things are changing for the best. I think that Alex Diaz de la Portilla is out for a reason. He was investigated. I have not changed from the moment that I run for office on transparency, and I was put on the record for that. One thing that I want to assure you, I just acquired or won by vote the chairwomanship of the Omni CRA. Let me tell you what was going with that Omni CRA. I'm so proud to have it, and I know I'm up on time, and I want to be very respectful.
Yeah. Thank you. Mr. Leal, Should Miami have its own inspector general, fully independent of the mayor and the commission?
Yes. Let me elaborate on some of the things that we've talked about. Our agenda, when you are going to a city commission meeting, is comprised of a number of sections. Those that review the agenda know that there is a consent agenda, there's a resolution, there's a first reading, second reading, and public comments around those areas. In order for you to have this transparency and this accountability, the first thing that we must do is sunshine. Sunshine is the best disinfectant. What does that mean? You need to request and obtain a records request for anything associated with many of those items that are the big ticket items for the city. So if you want to start, yes, I'm all in favor of an independent auditor to review the financial transactions, particularly
An auditor or an inspector general?
an inspector general, but someone within that office that, for example, in our dream department, that's our real estate department, we have hundreds of leases that if you were to examine carefully the amount of money that gets paid or doesn't get paid, that's where we need to start. We need to figure out our finances. So yes, we need someone independent, but the commissioner has that ability. You can put a discussion item on the agenda and say, directors for the following departments, I want you to do and provide an accounting, because what we've seen is that, those of them I remember, on the Virginia Key, when that lady that sold or gave those kayaks, when she spoke against homeless, the whole system was thrown against her because she spoke up. We need to stop that. That's what's happening. If you speak up, they'll throw code enforcement, police, and building all over you. We can stop that because it's as simple as you putting an item on the discussion item and saying, why are you doing this? Oh, you didn't have certificate of use? She didn't have a certificate of use for the whole time that she was operating.
Ms. Kosick, one of the most frightening, I think, of even though it's probably the one that's paid the least attention, investigations that going on is Mayor Francis Suarez's decision not to detail his outside sources of income. Commissioners file right now a kind of vague document that doesn't really require them to disclose much. How should we change that?
I think Mayor Suarez's activities have been questionable. I think that his role as a mayor is probably not serving the city of Miami. I think that the power to change anything lies with the voters. There are voters in D2. You had a very small turnout. If you want anything changed, you need to start with the voters that show up to the polls. No, we had 49,000 registered voters and 6,000 showed up for the special election. You can't expect change if you don't participate in the democratic process. So that's my answer.
Mr. Pardo, do you think that the mayor should be a full-time job in the city of Miami? And should there be a prohibition on outside not unemployment, but outside employment?
I do think the mayor should be a full-time job. I would actually like to see that in conjunction with a strong mayor. And I do believe there should be a prohibition from outside employment. I think that's important to be able to focus on the city.
Now remember that the first strong mayor in the county, when it was under indictment, does that make it more honest, really?
It lets them focus on the work, not necessarily more honest. I think we have to have other checks and balances for that piece.
There was accountability built into the system because it was Carlos Alvarez that got the strong mayor passed, and then I think 4 years later he was recalled by the voters with like an 88% vote. Yeah. So, Commissioner, do you think that creating a strong mayor system of government in the city of Miami would raise the level of accountability?
So the strong mayor figure is actually a figure that needs to be studied very well because we need to see the character of that strong mayor. We've seen it with our county mayor, Daniela Levine Cava, that she's done an amazing job, it's my opinion, as of managing our county. But for example, when Mayor Suarez ran for strong mayor, he did it prematurely. It was a moment where he didn't have the approval for it. And in this city, where a lot of the people come from so many dictatorships around Latin America, it's a topic that is very sensitive to the voter, because a strong mayor could become someone that has no checks and balances. So it's a tough topic to answer. I do believe that our mayor of the city of Miami should be full-time. I do believe that if the mayor is full-time, it needs no outside jobs, because it's going to have a full-time job, right? But the strong mayor figure, I think, needs to be analyzed quite deeply.
Thank you. Mr. Leal, you had your hand up?
So you need to understand that the mayor of Miami is pretty much powerless. All he has is his veto power and to give your proclamation and to announce the city manager or to promote or to nominate him and the city police. So you are extremely limited on the ability to, I remember many moons ago when I first heard, I am meeting with the mayor for this rezoning project that is going to destroy my street. Oh my God. And then when I started studying the code, studying how this works, it's powerless. So you did need to consider a strong mayor, but does that mean that, are you gonna have a vote in the commission? Right now, the mayor doesn't enjoy a vote in the commission. So you have to study the legal computations of what it actually you are doing when you're amending the code. But it does make sense for you to amend the code to include the ability for actually further provided checks and balance to the commission, because right now the mayor has no ability. So to the contrary of what you're hearing is the opposite. When you have one more vote and one more voice at the commission, it actually adds more of a discussion, as opposed to you have 5 guys that do, and 2 ladies, that do to do whatever they want, because the mayor is powerless to stop that. So that's a reality. That's a reality of how it works.
So let me follow up with something you said earlier about sunshine, because the biggest sunshine issue in the city of Miami right now is the mayor's refusal to disclose his outside sources of income. So how do you change the rules so that information is on the record and voters can know where he gets his money?
It's an excellent question, and it requires just simply the political will to amend the code at the county level that requires elected officials to disclose their outside funding and sources. Right now,
You can't do that at the city level?
you could, but the language or what you're going to get from the city attorney's office is that, oh, we're preempted by the county code. And because you're prevented by the county code, you have to work with your colleagues at the county level to say, we need to amend the code in order to strengthen our disclosure requirements, and that means that everybody has an impact. That's a reality of how that works. If you want to change to add a strengthening requirement, you amend the code at the county level that applies to the city and to any other municipality.
I don't think that's the case. I think that each city has different disclosure rules throughout Dade County. So you could propose something, maybe it'd be thrown out, but it's done right now differently in different cities. So Mr. Torres, would you change the disclosure rules?
The answer is hell yes. Very simple. But you have to have a consensus with the rest of the commissions that are there. Because if you go into it alone thinking you're Superman, you're not going to be that person. You need to make sure you're the Clark Kent and studious and working with the commissioners and building that consensus to change that. Because again, like I stated earlier, you're going to have a problem if you think you're going to go in there and expose all of these faults, right? We do know that our system is broken. We do know that. But we need to focus on how to improve it, how to fix it, and how to move away from that. Because if we don't start doing that, this is the problem that you're going to have, right? You have a mayor that is not being transparent and is hanging out at F1 and all these other places. Is that fair? Off of the back of the taxpayers? The answer is no, regardless if it's gifted or not. You should disclose at 100%. There's a thing called a checkbook, right? Remember the little checkbook register? You kind of balance it out. It's the same thing. Show me the full transaction of everything that's happening. If you fail to do that, let's have some sanctions. Simple as that.
Let me bring Mr. Castro into the discussion. Mr. Pardo mentioned whistleblower protections. You're somebody who deals with the city on a granular level, zoning, building, unsafe structures. Do you think that there needs to be stronger protections for whistleblowers, people who complain about city officials and both elected officials and city workers?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of departments should have an oversight committee implemented to ensure that there is no abuse of power or any type of corruption. And since we're on the topic of corruption, I was, we all know what's happening with the commissioners and the mayor and all that, but these are people that are in the limelight. These are people that are in front of the camera, and yet still they can't resist the temptation of bribery and corruption. I want you to think for a second. Think about the people that you don't see. Think about the people that work for the city that aren't elected, that are hired, that have been working there 10, 15, 20 years, that are protected by unions. That's the source of all the problems that we're having, not the people up front. That's what we need to weed out. And when we do, you're going to see all of a sudden there's going to be plenty of money for transportation, that we're going to have those bicycle lanes implemented. You'll see everything, all the dominoes, all the cards will fall.
Okay, we'll come back to that later. I think you want to wrap this up?
Yeah, well, I have one more question, Mr. Pardo. The Herald editorial board has advocated that we increase, one way to honest up City Hall is to increase the number of commissioners from 5 to either 7 or 9. What do you think of that idea?
I would be very much in support of increasing to 7 especially. I think that's a measured way to start the increase. Anything that brings residents and people closer to government, I strongly support.
Anybody else have a thought on that?
I think that there should be 9. I think in District 2 alone, we have 5 micro districts. I think the correct number is 9.
I think the correct number is 11. The number is 11 per the Census Bureau in relation to our actually state statutory law. You guys may think it's funny, but it's really not. We're supposed to have 11 commissioners per our census, per our last census, and we know that a lot of more people have moved in since then because it allows us to have more of a community, and it's very hard to corrupt 11 commissioners, whereas right now it's very easy to corrupt 5. We're easily able to see that. The other thing that I wanted to add regarding the corruption and the whistleblower hotline, you actually can go directly to U.S. Marshals to make any reports or FDLE outside of the city.
So we have a bit of 11. Do I hear 13?
I was going to go 24, but just kidding.
Mr. Torres, you had a thought.
The thought on this is,
Sorry.
Let's keep this a little bit real. With the power that you have there today, you're not going to move the needle to get 7. You're not going to get the needle to get 9. Earlier, one domino has fallen. One has a year and a half left. That's going to change the way government is governed. I will, from day one, start to champion that we need additional commissioners for the simple fact that we do not have enough, and the corruption that's tied, right? Because it's always a money grab for these individuals throughout the district, especially when you look at their budgets. They're all concerned about their budgets. They're concerned about, oh, this is my little piece. A disservice was done to District 1 gentlemen because of the money grab. And then they sit there and argue that, hey, I want the barbecue place in my district. Is that fair? You don't do these things. So at the end of the day, it's to move the needle forward. It's changing, and I will initiate some of these changes to increase our districts throughout. Thank you.
So I'm going to tell you a real life story, right? When I came into office, I knew my district pretty well, each of the neighborhoods. And we actually had to create 3 positions because we were missing the net office, right? It was a constituent service request because commissioners, we need to legislate, we need to actually be there to advocate for our constituents, and then we need to make sure that each of the neighborhoods in District 2 are very diverse, that they're well served. So we brought in 3 community advocates. That means that we do need more representation within the commission. And one thing that I need to assure you, we work for District 2. They work for District 5, 4, whichever commissioner is working for our city. But the city of Miami, if it's not integrated and united, is never going to be the city that is going to thrive with the quality of life that we need. So yeah, we do need more commissioners.
All right, I think, yeah. I think we're going to move on. We could talk about public corruption all night. But we'd like to cover some other topics as well. And the next topic speaks directly to leadership and accountability. A show of hands, please. How many candidates here tonight have read the Miami Herald's editorial series, Broken Promises? The Herald won a Pulitzer Prize this year for its reporting on the lack of accountability and leadership in South Florida. 4 of the 5 broken promises that the Herald wrote about were in the city of Miami. Think about that. The West Grove, Virginia Key, the Miami Circle, and Parcel B behind the Miami Arena. That says a lot about where we live and the legacy that one of you will inherit as the District 2 Commissioner.
So to start this section area, we're going to talk about the West Grove. Okay? The Bahamians who settled the neighborhood and the African Americans who joined them helped build Miami. That legacy and the history behind it is now being lost. An important piece of Miami's black history is being erased before our eyes, and there's no real drive to stop it, the Herald said. After years of failed redevelopment efforts and official neglect, the neighborhood may be at a tipping point. The Herald called for fresh leadership from the new District 2 Commissioner. Are you prepared to lead on this issue, and if so, how? What steps would you take to preserve and revitalize Miami's historic West Grove neighborhood? And we will start with Mr. Castro.
Well, that's right up my alley since I've been living there for 12 years. So when I ran in 2016 against Xavier Suarez, the main reason I did so was to prevent the systematic demolition of all these Bahamian wood frame vernacular bungalows. And unfortunately, they were just they were just being demolished continuously. And there was an effort by the previous commission to initiate a blanket historic designation, which I don't think was the right way to preserve the history of the neighborhood, because there's implications with historic designation. So, unfortunately, it's a little too late for these cottages, and the only thing we can really do now is we have to basically we have to use what we have now, and well, it's a pretty complicated question.
It is, and we can come back to you.
It is.
Yeah.
Commissioner Como, you've been in the chair. They called for fresh leadership. Can you provide fresh leadership even though you're already there?
So I actually gave an interview to Amy recently, 2 weeks ago, and I think that series is going to come out on everything that we've done for the Little Bahamas, Village West, West Grove, however we want to call it. We're one Coconut Grove. It's one Coconut Grove, period. And I'm deep into this issue. We've been working with different entities, including Rebuilding Miami, affordable housing entities, non-for-profits, the churches, to make sure that we can bring affordability. One thing that I'm exploring is actually putting a taxing cap to the residents that have been there for more than probably 15 years to actually be able to have some savings to keep their homes. On Monday, we did a workshop for predatory investors that I have been working really hard with different entities to make sure that we can educate the community so you don't sell your home to the wrong person for the wrong price and you feel that you're getting gentrified, which is wrong. We've actually created a community garden that I've been announcing and I've been searching for the land. Why? Because we need to create community. We need to be able to bring small and medium businesses to this area to activate the neighborhood. I've been advocating as well with the county to bring green canopy to Grand Avenue to make sure that we can have more shade. It's part of a heat plan that I've been working with in the city that passes legislation. I am actually working as well to see how we can bring to the, I know I'm running out of time. It's so many accomplishments and I'm open to discuss them one-on-one with you, but it's deep in my heart. Historic preservation for me is part of our memory and it's part of our history, and we need to actually make sure that we embrace it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Let's jump to Ms. Kosick. You have a business on Grand Avenue. Why have all these previous redevelopment efforts, all the promises that were made over the years, dating back 30 years, to revitalize the historic West Grove, why have they failed?
I think that a couple things. I have been on Grand Avenue. I was the only a white business owner to open. I've been welcomed into the community. I think that the distance between here and there is very small. I think humanity is just starting a conversation for starters, building trust. I think that the failure of Grand Avenue to become what it should become, whether it's its own business district or whether it's the thriving Grand Avenue, that it's not only Bahamian history, it's African American history. It's divided. There was a southern migration from Georgia and Alabama, and that's a very, very different person than the Bahamian story. So it's a whole story, not just limited to the Bahamian history. But in that being said, they recall a Grand Avenue that was thriving. I think the most important thing to keep in mind right now is T5. Look at T5 and look at very carefully enhanced T5. And T5, enhanced T5, could bring you up to 8 stories on Grand Avenue. It's very different than US 1. It's very important because everybody's talking about historic preservation, all this and that. And shade trees are another thing. If you don't know what kind of shade tree we're going to have there, there's never been a shade tree out there. There hasn't been a shade tree there for 10 years. So it's just really important to get the facts correct, and enhanced T5 is something that everybody should be looking at very carefully because that's the cheapest view to the bay from Grand Avenue.
Great, thank you so much. Mr. Pardo, you come from the world of finance and wealth management. The previous commissioner pushed to establish a CRA for the West Grove and ran into a wall of opposition at the county. That idea is now dead. Do you think the CRA is worth revisiting, and would that be a solution to help kickstart some revitalization in the West Grove?
I personally don't believe the CRA is a good solution. I think it's better done with issuing bonds and dealing with select projects. I think CRAs have poor disclosure. They have a lot of authority, too much, in my view. And I think the problems in the West Grove, really, it's a story of neglect. When you look at what's happening with Varick Park, when you look at what happens with all the displaced people, because affordable housing doesn't cut it. A lot of the criteria around affordable housing doesn't meet the needs in the Grove. We need to get out there and see it and speak to people, because I love the series that the Herald did, but there are predatory practices. And this is wrong, and I'm convinced that if most people knew what was happening in the West Grove, they would act.
So does the city of Miami have the authority and the power to go after those predatory practices?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
May I say something? A lot of that predatory practice has already come and gone, right, Michael? I mean, this is already so many pieces have already been, eaten up. But one thing that nobody really seems to talk about is actually the people that live in the West Grove, and the fact that there is. Hello? A literacy problem. They can't fill out the forms to get into the affordable housing or the old folks home because there's a barrier to entry. So at the most basic level, you're failing the people of Miami. They can't read the forms. They don't have the 2 years of tax returns. They have a suspended driver's license. At our most granular level, we're failing. So how is a society able to function when we can't
how would you fix that?
Well, we first need literacy. People need to know what they're entitled to. They don't even get, they're out of the loop, and the developers come in and they put these presentations together. We're gonna have a workshop on the forum, and they cover their, and then the person can't fill out the form. They don't have a computer. They don't know how to read. They don't even have a tax. They don't have their taxes. There's no preparation. So they're not going to be prepared for the next time a developer comes along. And they're not going to be able to protect themselves and stay in their 3rd, 4th generation residence.
So, Mr. Torres, representing downtown, you've seen some revitalization down there and some residential units. Do you have some thoughts about the West Grove and this broken promise that the Herald has written about?
I do, and I kind of tie it in with another thing too that I was chomping at the bit, which is the Parcel B scenario. Hopefully you'll give me the opportunity to kind of talk about that.
We're going to get to that
but
later.
When you look at the West Grove, it's an area that has been forgotten, right? And it seems like it's been done by design.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I do not think that's fair. What I do think is fair is that if you create a CRA, it's not going to benefit them. if you're willing to sit down with the stakeholders that are in that area to talk about how do we get you engaged to increase the tax base or revenue for that area, that's key for them to be revitalized, right? As I've been canvassing and knocking doors, I hear the same complaint over and over. I can't afford to live here anymore. My taxes are gone up. Once I take office on the 7th or the 8th of November, one of the things I really want to start looking at is, hey, can I offer tax breaks for individuals that are there for a certain amount of time, or a loan at zero interest that they would be willing to pay it over time, and as long as they don't move, right? Because the biggest thing that they say is, hey, I'm ready to leave because there's a $4 million house next door and I'm priced out. So I would look at innovative solutions for that part of the community, just like we've done with certain things throughout this city. And it's always that, let's forget that piece, and I don't think that's right. Same thing would happen with
Great, thank you.
redistricting.
So let's jump to Mr. Pardo, and then we'll wrap this segment up.
I just wanted to add there that I think it's very important on the literacy point that we also have almost like a navigator position so that someone can get help when they're dealing with code enforcement and permitting. They don't have the money and resources to deal with expediters and land use attorneys. I mean, these aren't things that are available in the West Grove, and they need more services, more protection, and just generally more engagement.
And the last point to that is there's a discrimination on the bonds. Like, for example, there's a big void of fathers in the West Grove. They might go to jail for a very, they can't make bond, and that financial discrimination is destroying these, these families, the communities. They need more than just literacy, and I agree with Damien, so.
Well, the one thing that I didn't hear anybody say is grants. Nobody's offered them grants or an exchange program where if they want to get out of their homes, if they want to give up their land, that they would have a guaranteed place to live. That's one thing that has not been brought up yet is a grant program. That's one of the things I would implement because we do have a total illiteracy program. So if they buy their homes for $1 million today, they go out, they don't even know what to do with the $1 million, and it's gone before you know it, and then they're homeless.
There's an elephant in the room here. We're talking about an African American part of the city, and there's not an African American part on the stage. There's a long-held gripe in Overtown and Liberty City that African Americans are underrepresented in Miami city government. So I'm interested if anybody has an idea, and I'll throw this out for you generally, to increase African American representation at City Hall.
If we had the 11 commissioners, and I know that you guys are laughing at that, but if we had the 11 commissioners, they would be districts so that would happen organically, and that is the state law.
Maybe.
Commissioner?
So I was the only commissioner to vote no for the city redistricting plan. And I think that's going to continue in litigation, and I'm going to continue advocating for Coconut Grove to be united, for historic neighborhoods like Morningside, for example, to be united. And I think that's going to be part of fixing this problem. I do believe that increasing the commissioners can work, but I also believe that at this point in time, when we see the breakdown of the city of Miami and the demographics, we need to make sure that we're united. That we're united into one city and that we have diversity. We've been seeing what's happening with redistricting around the country, and it's embarrassing.
What did you do to advocate?
Thank you. So moving on, I'd like to...
Can I just ask one really important question? I'd like to know what Ms. Covo did to advocate for the people in the West Grove. I think all of us want to know that. Yeah. Like with the commissioner, she's saying she's the only one that voted.
We'll have candidate-specific questions down.
Moderator's control.
Let me
Mr. Leal, I'm coming to you in just a second, okay? We're going to broaden the focus a little bit and take it out to widen the focus, the lens, so we're looking at the entire Grove. So many residents fear that Coconut Grove is losing its bohemian vibe. More and more families and small businesses are being priced out of the neighborhood. So Mr. Leal, you posted a picture of yourself on Instagram last month with Danny Lovett of Revolution Bicycle Services. Danny recently lost his lease and was forced to close his shop after 27 years. In your post, you said, quote, "Every business matters, particularly our small business. We need to defend and promote them." So what would you have done to save Danny's business or other businesses like that and preserve Coconut Grove's distinct culture and its vibe?
Thank you for the question, and I guess I have to thank my wife because she handles my Instagram account, and I just take the pictures. It was heartbreaking to hear from, and that's legitimate. My wife is not here; she's taking care of my two kids. But if she's listening, hi Laura, thank you. It is critical. When I met with him as a candidate, but I also met with him as an attorney. I was shocked to hear that for a year and a half, the landlord had not installed a working AC, particularly when that's a basic requirement under Florida law. And I said, have you talked to an attorney? Have you worked, how is it possible that you've been paying rent and you haven't been getting the service? I actually offered him that I looked around with my friends at our realtor, and I said, look, there are other options for you, that you don't have to be here if you don't want to be here, or he's kicking you out. So you can actually move to another location. You provide a great service. You've been a foundation in this community. I'm not a biker, but
So how do we institutionalize that? This is you meeting Danny and offering some help and assistance.
It always starts, sorry to interrupt, but it always starts with that anecdotal, that example. And it is key that in a commissioner's office, you have qualified people that have some legal background that can have the resident or the homeowner or your small business owner call and say, here's the issue that I have, and be able to answer that phone call and say, okay, what's happening? Because do I need to get involved from a code perspective? Mm-hmm. Do I need to get involved from an unsafe structure perspective? Because you have to be careful of powers of government that you use, because they could be coercive and very aggressive. So sometimes it's having that conversation, and in that scenario, sometimes the relationship is irreconcilable. Go somewhere else, let's find somewhere else. But for me, I went there because that's what makes the Grove or any community intact, our small business, and we have to defend it.
So, yeah, Ms. Kosa.
Thank you. I was Danny's neighbor, and I had the same landlord. And that was pre-Coco Walk. And we didn't have AC, great AC, ever. But, I mean, in all fairness, we had a great location. The rents were a lot different. The parking situation was out of control back then. We had kind of like, double people, towing you every 5 seconds. We lost all our customers. And basically, I moved to the West Grove, and Danny and I talked about that. If you walk any given Saturday on Grand Avenue, it stops at the farmer's market. People do not want to venture to the more, let's say, reasonable rent rates for a business. We just actually have 5 new businesses opening between Plaza and 37. Unheard of. For 5 years, there was nobody. But people don't want to walk there. There's not clean streets. There's no shade. It doesn't look like, outside Mr. C. It doesn't look nice and happy. And let me tell you, even when we all worked in the building with Danny, we had the root problem. But nobody will go beyond 32nd Avenue until that part of the city is cleaned up. And that's why we can't have more business. People don't want to go there.
Yeah. Commissioner, what do you have to say about that?
So one of the first things that we did was actually advocate for medium and small businesses that got out-rented, because the reality with the bike shop was that. I was a client of that bike shop. I've seen how Coconut Grove has developed. I was against the way that Coco Walk was actually redeveloped. I didn't like it, and I've been here for a long time. I first lived at Bay Heights, then in Center Grove. I right now live on Franklin Avenue and 34th. Historic preservation, trying to make sure that small and medium businesses, mine included, have a place in Coconut Grove is a top priority. But what I said before, identifying the right native trees. That's why we're trying to find a contractor that actually can plant the right trees on Grand Avenue. We just don't want to go there and plant a tree that is not going to grow, because that's not going to create shade. Talking to the community, going after the schools and advocating with the families, with the schools to see what they need, making sure that we can allocate funding and subsidies to summer programs, making sure that the people who live in Coconut Grove can actually bring their families back. Stay here, but bring their families back. It's also a huge priority for us. One idea that I had that I think that is going to be pretty successful is actually making sure that anyone who's building as of right, because there's a lot of things that are building right now on Grand Avenue as of right that had nothing to do under my administration, have actually a covenant that actually says you need to build small and medium retail space to be able to activate it. I've been talking to the Coconut Grove bid owners to see if, the part of the bid that actually is there, to see if we can do a business improvement district that is united. I spoke to the Chamber of Commerce and asked them, what can we do to make sure that we assist these businesses? All of this has been done, all of this has been in the record.
Okay.
So all of that could have actually been handled, believe it or not, with a grant for him to be able to move to a different location. The other thing that could have been done is legislation to keep big boxes from coming in to push small businesses out to begin with.
Thank you. We want to hit one more topic, and we're almost out of time for this segment. I promised Mr. Torres we'd come back to Parcel B. So let's revisit the Herald's Broken Promises series. So voters were promised a public park on Parcel B, which is a strip of waterfront land behind the Miami Arena. That was 30 years ago. The powers that be in the city of Miami and the county have never delivered on that promise. So what would you do, or would you commit yourself to getting Parcel B delivered with a waterfront park that people downtown and from the Grove, wherever in the city of Miami, can enjoy? That's public property, and that was the bargain we struck when the Miami Heat got to build its arena.
So it's not what I would do, it's what I'm currently doing. As an advocate and president for the Downtown Neighbors Association, we've taken that challenge to another level. And for all sake of transparency, we've sat down with the county mayor. It's a county parcel, the way it's being ran. So, 30 years ago, promises made, promises broken. The DNA, especially myself, I've been with the mayor, the county mayor, Jimmy Morales, who's the CFO. We've sat down, we did a comprehensive survey. Over 2,000 signatures and information came back to us. We're moving the needle because they're ready to announce that they're ready to move forward and make that, quote unquote, a state-of-the-art park. This has nothing to do with city, but my advocacy has made it part of the city because you have Bayfront Park to the south, you have Marie Ferrer Park to the north. Bayfront is more so of an entertainment venue. MAF Park, we all know the drama that's going in there. They're hacking trees without permits, right? But this piece here, Parcel B, the information we've given and the thing that the community is looking at is saying, we just want green spaces with tree canopies where we can lay down and see the sights. So the DNA with my leadership has been moving forward with this needle. That's probably going to be coming out soon because again, it's not a city initiative, but we've taken it upon ourselves to making sure that the Miami Heat and the county are now being responsive because they now see that there's a living, breathing population there. It's taken them 30 years, and I feel bad for them, but they should have seen it before. So at the end of the day, it's moving forward.
Let's get closer to home. You know, Coconut Grove has a significant problem, right, with lack of parks. There's no space here. What would you do to change that, or what would you do to make better use of the parks that we had? Let's start with Mr. Pardo.
I'd like to see us use land trusts and actually buy areas that we can and start converting those into public parks and spaces for people to be able to use. That would be my main, kind of my main targeted point.
Anybody else with thoughts on parks?
I have a question with that, with parks, right? So developer comes in, I would hold the developer accountable giving us green spaces. A percentage of their land has to be green spaces that is a public space. Why do I say that? If we're building vertically, more so than anything else, we need that space. If you go to some other cities throughout the United States and even into like London, for example, new buildings that are coming in, they're giving you spaces at rooftops, right? So not that I'm saying we're gonna go there, but I would hold the developer accountable on a comprehensive plan that if it comes before my desk, I would say I need to see green spaces. With that, I would have never approved Freedom Park because that's taken away green spaces, and part of the verbiage in there says, hey, I can replace it and remodel a park, it's still green space. That's the biggest scam that ever happened to us.
One of the possibilities that I see is the revitalization of Peacock Park.
I also think that the residents of the West Grove don't have fair access to waterfront. If you ever really look, you don't see a lot of people from the West Grove in Kennedy Park, and I don't think that's fair. I also think that at some point we may touch upon the Playhouse, we don't have a community center on par with Key Biscayne or with Coral Gables. And I don't understand that with all 300,000 new people and a lot of young families with children under the age of 10, where is that community center serving Coconut Grove?
Well, I would say,
Commissioner Coble?
so when I came into office, I found an embarrassment in the City of Miami Parks Department. An embarrassment. It's not acceptable that our parks are not well maintained. I'm going to give you an example, Blanche Park. We have multiple dog stations that didn't work. Just walk around Regatta Park. Around Regatta Park. Who can do a picnic at Regatta Park at 12 midday if you don't have more trees, if you don't have shade? We cannot maintain. The bathroom at Kennedy Park was closed for what, 9 years? I pushed calling Parks and Recreation daily, the Parks Director, for it to be reopened. I did everything that I could and it got reopened. Parks has been, and it's been my obsession because I'm a mother of 3 children and my mom, who's a senior, actually walks to the park and that's her place to actually see nature and feel better. We
So
need
what
to
grade
make sure.
would you give the city's Parks Department? Parks and
From 1 to
Recreation?
10?
No, from A to F.
To be quite honest, I've been quite disappointed. I would have given them an F, and I actually called them on the city commission day, and I wanted to tell them, and I told them,
So how
we're
do we
not going to
build
pass
more-
budget. We're not going to pass budget
Mr.
if we
Pardo,
don't ensure,
more
if we don't ensure that you can
accountability
fix
into
our
the-
parks.
Into the system.
Well, I wanted to say something about parks in general. I really think we need to rethink the way we deal with parks. I mean, we don't include residents at the very beginning. More often than not, what happened with Varick Park happens in many other parks. Look at Morningside Park. It's been a disaster because they don't include the residents from the very beginning. And also the way they come up with their schedules for maintaining equipment or maintaining pools versus replacing really needs to be looked at. We lack maintenance for years and years and years in parks just to let it deteriorate entirely, and then finally we just put in a new one that the public never asked for, never wanted. So we really need to do a deep dive there and reconsider everything that's going on with our parks.
Ms. Tasker?
So one of the things that I would do with our parks is make sure that the public actually has access to the contracts before the parks start, so that the public can actually review the contracts. In the case of Varick Park, that should have been caught. I'm sure that someone in the public would have easily been able to see the pool depth was completely different than what the pool depth is now. The other additional thing is with the county and the city, we have to make sure that our parks and our waterfront properties are not given away. For instance, the 1801 building in Brickell was actually given away. That was where some of our teachers and low-income families actually lived, and they had waterfront property. That was given away to a developer. So I would make sure to prevent any more of our waterfront property going to developers as a whole, because we have enough. We need to make sure that we preserve some of the waterfront properties for our parks and that they're maintained.
And I'd like to add about the bathrooms in Kennedy Park. I think that we have enough smart people in real estate and development to really see what things should cost. The rumor has it that the bathrooms cost over $1.5 million. And I think that there's enough people in this room that probably know how to bid out or get 2 or 3 open bids for that type of project.
Thank you.
On parcel B real quick is, what we did, and the county fell in love with us on this, including the mayor, is when we brought in the survey, they were very surprised that we took the time and got the community involved. They never had a survey done to the extent that when we presented it in one of our town hall meetings, the county came in and they were like, we've never had this. This is great, because they had a different idea. When they received the idea from the community and the public, they were happy with the simple fact that they're getting their green space back. So let that be a lesson to everybody here, that at the end of the day, it's important to listen to the constituents. We should be able to sit here and listen to them on all aspects of our government, not just parks itself, including the Coconut Grove Playhouse.
Very short, because we've got to move on.
I just want to say that each of our mobile offices in the past 7 months has been at a park. I actually came today from Brickell Key because there were concerns about a development that is actually being raised right there. And what we do is that we actually call upon the community to come to the park, but not only speak up about the park, but also about the community engagement. This month we have 2 more that are actually going to be held in 2 parks. And that's a way that we can be open office and we can bring the administration to the constituent for questions.
Terrific, thank you. We're going to move on to another segment now. And these are questions that were drafted specific to the candidate we're going to ask. And how much time are we giving them? I think maybe a minute to respond. We're going to skip around a little bit, but I think Mr. Torres is first up.
Mr. Torres, okay.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Torres, you won the Herald's endorsement in February, the February special election, based in part on your experience and accomplishments as president of the DNA. Specifically, the Herald said you were successful in getting the city to enforce its own ordinance at Parrot Jungle and other city properties. Also, you championed the pilot program that introduced electric scooters downtown. Notable, perhaps, but not quite the transformational change that you promised to deliver if elected. So how can voters know that you're prepared to help guide a government with nearly 4,700 employees and a $2.7 billion budget? It's not just scooters, my friend. What more you got?
City noise ordinance. We championed that idea where we changed the ordinance where if you went to city property, you can throw the biggest birthday party and code enforcement and PD will never show up. So we changed the verbiage, item 38 and 39, where you're no longer exempt. I championed that. I played quote unquote lobbyist to all the commissioners to making sure that item was changed. So if you're asking me about experience and what I've done, the Herald said it best. I've led the entire community, not just downtown, because I do not think macro. And that is the problem with some of these commissioners, that they think small instead of thinking big. And I've always thought of the community and the district, not just quote unquote downtown, because we are all one. We're not just the Grove, we are an entire district. So,
Great, thank
am
you.
I able to deal with that? The answer is yes.
Okay, next up is Commissioner. So you've pointed to your accomplishments tonight and on your website since taking office earlier this year, but starting a new job is always hard. So let's talk about your learning curve. Can you give us an example of when you were frustrated, disappointed, or experienced a setback at City Hall, and how you learned from that experience?
I am disappointed every day. It's so hard to navigate the city of Miami government. The amount of bureaucracy, the lack of administration, the time that the processes take. For example, I championed to resurface a road here in Coconut Grove, which was a safety hazard. I have to champion it, working it with the county, working it with the school district. And I had to call every day each of the parties involved to make sure that that would get done before school started, because it was a safety issue.
And about the learning curve, did you learn from that? And are you better at your job now?
I'm a fast learner. I'm learning extremely fast. I'm navigating government. But remember, I have a track record of actually covering city politics for a long time. When you're actually a reporter on the streets of Miami on a daily basis, you work until 11 p.m., you cover hurricane season, you leave your family alone because you want to be a public servant. As a reporter, you can be a great public servant in the city of Miami.
Thank you. Mr. Leal? Your campaign website calls out the unethical and corrupt culture at City Hall and says you will fight it. You also point to your experience at City Hall as a top qualification for a seat on the City Commission. But given your close association with the mayor, Francis Suarez, you served as counsel to the mayor, and the recent questions about his ethical and transparency, are you the best candidate to change the culture at City Hall?
Without a doubt. You need someone that for the next 4 years is not going to be on training wheels. I was someone that worked at the city, left the city in order to reform the city. And none of those accusations have anything to do with me. I ask you and anybody here to look at my record at the city. The one that drafted the veto to prevent the demolishment of the Playhouse was me. The one that drafted legislation to allow more people and more protection for historic properties was me. The one that fought against efforts to curb our planning and zoning board ability to properly review projects was me. Did I want to do more? Yes, and that's why I'm here tonight, and that's why I'm trying to make the change from the outside by now coming in with the experience. But when I was at the city, my record speaks for itself.
So, Mr. Leal, how would you describe your relationship with Mayor Suarez?
I have a relationship with all of the commissioners, including the mayor, where I think it's important for people to understand, because some people have the improper perception that I know the mayor for years and years. I came to the city fighting a rezoning on my street because as the president of the Condo Association, I was asked by my neighbors to come and address this topic. I did. I showed up at City Hall. I argued against this rezoning, and lo and behold, I got a job offer from the mayor's office to fight the commission and the city attorney's office. So if you want somebody that the people here, some of you know, the one that pushed forward the pocket items to support the appeal process and the legal process was me. All of that legal work was done by me through that office. So without a doubt, I have a good reputation.
Thank you.
And you could see on my website the review for all of the employees and all department directors because I was respectful, professional.
So just to move on, good response. We got to kind of limit the time so that everybody gets equal time. Mr. Pardo, just to be equal opportunity, everybody's got a connection to City Hall here. Ms. Joe Carollo and District 3 are listed as platinum sponsors on the Gay Ocho Festival website. How would you describe your relationship with Commissioner Carollo? And please explain why you called for his resignation in June 2023.
Sure. Well, that's when the verdict came down, the $63.5 million verdict and the $2.5 million legal bill that came our way. So yeah, I absolutely called for his removal and immediate resignation. The fact that he was a sponsor for Gay Ocho, it's a community event, and those are not his dollars. Those are City of Miami dollars. It wouldn't be any different than Commissioner Covo supporting Goombay Festival. Those are not her dollars. Those are City of Miami dollars. And I would not have been doing a good job if I allowed the community to suffer because of any other perception. Job as chair of Forward Miami is to make sure that the community thrives and that the Diversity and Inclusion Festival would do well. That's exactly what we did.
So a follow-up to that, as the founder and chair of Forward Miami and the Gay Ocho Festival, do you personally solicit donations to the festival sponsors? Do you think that would pose any kind of conflict for you if you were elected?
Well, I'm no longer the chair. I'm no longer the chair of Forward Miami.
So do you personally talk to people about giving money?
No longer. When I was chair, yeah, I spoke with corporations, individuals, anyone willing to give. My mission was to help support a great festival that lifted up Little Havana, its economy, the residents, and it opened it up to diversity and inclusion. Now it's actually the largest festival in the nation on diversity and inclusion.
So that wouldn't be a problem if you were elected to the commission. You wouldn't be involved in soliciting donations or contributions to the Gay Ocho Festival?
Absolutely not. I'm no longer involved in anything like that.
Okay. Let's jump to Mr. Castro. On your website, you call out the city's building department and code enforcement for bringing bad faith enforcement actions against local property owners and for poor customer service. In response, you say you will seek to establish an oversight committee to ensure that these departments only press legitimate claims and that they expedite enforcement cases and assist homeowners to resolve their cases in a financially responsible manner. How would this oversight committee operate? Who would appoint the oversight committee, and what authority would they have?
Well, in order for oversight committee to have any proper effect, it would have to be selected by a panel of people, local homeowners that understand the woes of all the other. Well, let me just say this. When I walk around the neighborhood, all I see are violation notices on doors left and right. Every time I walk by, I see a new one every morning. So there's no shortage of people who have complaints towards the building department. So I think that we'll have a lot of eager citizens that would love to join an oversight committee. That could be appointed. You could have just like any other oversight committee, we have one for the police. So it would function in the same way. I hope that answers your question.
Ms. Kosick, the city attorney, Victoria Mendez, has been accused of abusing her official position to commit real estate fraud. Do you think the city attorney should be placed on leave until the accusations have been thoroughly investigated, or what should the city do to respond to this issue?
If she did something wrong, yes, she should leave the office until it's resolved, until she's cleared of that, absolutely.
But no other action should be taken at present.
Well, I guess the case would have to be vetted, and they would have to figure out if that's accurate. I mean, at this point, we're covering up a lot worse. I'm not saying her egregions, but a lot of things are taking their own time and tempo to be resolved, and people are still in office or able to run for office. So I can't accurately answer that question. I mean, if someone did something wrong, they should leave the office, get it worked out, and if she's cleared of her name.
There is an accusation from a lawsuit that she abused her official position
Yes,
to commit real estate fraud.
Correct.
So by a show of hands, who would push for the city attorney to take a leave of absence while that case is fully investigated?
yes, that's what I think should
No, but
happen.
you just said that you wouldn't take action until it was proven.
No, I'm sorry, you misunderstood me. I said, I think she would have to leave office, get it all vetted out. If she's cleared of whatever she's being accused of, then she could maybe retake her position. Okay. I'm sorry, I just want to be clear.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So jumping to Christy Tasker, again, on your campaign website, you say the city should give police a 5% raise to reduce attrition. How much would that cost, and where would the money come from? The city's operating budget right now is $1.6 billion, and more than half, 52% of that money goes to public safety. The police budget alone is $346 million, and that's up 24% in 2 years. So where does the money come from? How much would be needed?
Great question. So when I've met with our chief, he basically says that we have about a third of our department up for retire in the next 3 years. We're going to be short another third of officers. We're already short almost 100. It takes him reviewing 100 applications to get 2 people. That's a 2% turn rate. When he gets those 2 people, he's paying to train them, and he's having a massive amount of turnover. So we have a churn and burn. I've even questioned that we are actually defunding the police without realizing it because they do not have a living wage increase. If our police do not get a living wage increase, we're going to constantly lose them to other departments, and therefore we are going to be defunding our own police ourselves.
So would your proposal be revenue neutral, or would it cost additional dollars?
It would actually not cost additional dollars at all. It would actually save him money in training because we would save about 10% if that motion were to be made and he were to give our police the living wage that they need.
Can I comment on that?
No.
Sure,
please.
Go for it.
So the question is, how do we increase, right?
Yeah.
Correct? How do we increase the salaries, as she's portraying to say, correct?
The giving
She said
Miami
5%.
police officers a 5% raise.
Okay. So here's the thing. No one wants to talk about it. No one wants to hear it. In order for that 5% to happen, you have to increase the city's millage rate. And the city right now is touting the simple fact that the millage rate is flat, so no new taxes. So you have to, yes you do, you have to increase the millage rate in order to increase salaries for any of the employees of the city of Miami. I asked the Miami Herald, double check on that, because that's true. Why? The DDA, the Downtown Development Authority, we went after this. They have a millage rate that's flat, that they're saying is flat, but however, they just gave themselves a $1.2 million raise for that organization, which means the downtowners are going to be taxed at a higher level than the rest of the entire district, which is no different than you have to increase the millage rate in order to, quote unquote, support the 5% that Ms. Tasker is talking about.
All right. So, Commissioner.
So the City of Miami has a recruitment process. I invite you all to ask yourself, how much time does our city management take to actually negotiate with the unions their contracts, and how much money they spend on outside counsel to be able to negotiate these contracts. It's absolutely unacceptable. If we need to actually be competitive with cities like Coral Gables, Miami Beach, North Miami Beach, our police officers are making less when they start within the city of Miami. We also have an issue with recruiting policemen and women who don't want to become a police officer because they don't feel protected. And that's another political news story that has been out there for a long, long time. So it's not a matter of budget. It's a matter of being able to recruit. There's a disparity in salaries. We see directors who make a lot of money, and we see people that clean our parks and that are actually there that make $15 an hour, and that's unacceptable.
If we were so concerned about legal counsel that we do spend a fortune, all that it would require is for this commissioner or for your next commissioner to put a very simple item on the agenda like she did when she sold out a park, the Alan Morris Park, and simply say, direct the city attorney not to hire and not to spend any more on the redistricting lawsuit, on the Carollo lawsuits, and every other lawsuit that the city is facing and is losing, and you haven't done anything about it for years.
Okay.
And
Commissioner.
there should be a lien actually placed on Carollo's home.
I just actually want to quote something, Mr. Leal, that you just said. When you are smart enough to legislate and to put items on the agenda, you need to make sure that you have the votes. You cannot just go around telling people, oh, I'm going to be your savior, I'm going to put this on the agenda. And you know how to navigate the city better than anyone because you were there. When that park situation came up, and the 2 times that we actually had the opportunity to discuss them, and all of my mobile offices and all of my open offices, you never came.
Commissioner,
came.
I stand on principle,
Yeah.
and I'm going to
Never
be putting
came.
the items on the agenda with proper notice and not actually sandbag
Let's
and hide
direct the
settlement
comments
agreements.
to the audience and to the moderators.
May I
please.
respond back,
Ms.
considering
Tasker.
the question
Yeah.
was related to that? Number one, I actually asked Ms. Covo to put the items on the agenda so that the public is aware. So that is something that I've asked you to do before that you've not done. And when it comes to the police themselves, they also don't have cages in their cars, and they do not have working technology to actually go on calls. It is a mass problem. We cannot keep our officers without that 5% increase. And Mr. Torres's remarks were incorrect. Actually, we do not have to give a millage rate for all employees within the city. That is incorrect.
It's 8 o'clock.
Yeah, okay.
Can I do one more?
So we're gonna do a couple more questions and then wrap this up because we've got the lightning round to come, okay? Mr. Torres,
Parcel B again?
after endorsing you in the special election, the Herald amended its endorsement to note that you faced in Arizona approximately 20 years ago a series of charges. In one case, you were placed on probation. The information is now public. Is there anything you'd like to say to District 2 voters about the circumstances that led to those charges and the outcome?
Sure. When I received the endorsement, even beforehand, with the Miami Herald, I was transparent and honest as it relates to my tough decision in terms of the divorce that I went through. I was never arrested, held, or any of that issues, as a lot of these individuals are creating a false narrative. We sat down again with the Miami Herald and addressed that in extensive detail. The only thing I was found guilty of, and it's the most stupidest thing, was I paid a fine of $185 because of window tinting on the vehicle. As far as my divorce issues that I was accused by my ex-wife, is irrelevant. There's no there. All of that was addressed. Not once, not twice, but several times, including with several candidates here that are trying to create a false narrative against me. But I've been very upfront with anything that I've done because I will never violate the public's trust.
Thank you. Final question for the commissioner. Last week you voted against a proposal to permit LED billboards in downtown after hundreds of residents voiced their objections. I am proud to have led the effort to defeat this proposal. You said at the time. And yet, a political committee supporting your campaign accepted $15,000 in May from a billboard company with 2 City Hall lobbyists raising questions about your lobby, your loyalties. In hindsight, should the political committee have accepted that money?
So everyone has the right to be supportive of a campaign within a political committee, within your campaign office. Am I happy about it? No. It's a political system that is working like that. But I can assure you that I'm completely independent. And actually, my vote shows it. No one can buy me. No one can buy me. I vote because I hear to my constituents. That's the perfect example, actually.
All right,
If it's a
thank you very
perfect
much.
example, can you return the $15,000 that you
For
received?
sure. For sure.
Are you committing right now in front of the
I'm
audience?
committed to return the $15,000.
Because the issue is here, I discovered the issue that was going on with these billboards. When I went to PZAB board that evening, we unanimously got a 10-0 vote not to move forward with it. The very next week, this item is before commission, ready to vote. And we asked Commissioner at that time, please do not move forward with this. Do some outreach, do whatever you have to do. But SOS, return the money. Because at the end of the day, this is something that is not good for the community. When I showed up and brought over 2,000 petition signatures on an item that is just bad for business, I will not be a sellout to anybody, a pay-to-play in a short amount of time as our commissioner currently is.
All right, just to wrap this up, so Commissioner, you can ask the political committee to return that money, but that's not your decision, right? The political committee makes that call?
She controls it.
No. I can ask the political committee to return any type of money that I like to return.
And-
What I'm trying to tell you is
and-
I'm completely independent, and this is the perfect example.
Exactly, so you are committing tonight to ask the political committee to return that money.
Right now, I'm making it public.
Thank you.
Very good.
And I would like, can we clarify who actually started the petition that Mr. Torres has taken?
We need to move on, I'm sorry. We haven't been very good timekeepers up here, our fault.
We've gone longer than we should
Yeah,
have on
and
this
so we
section
really want to
because it
get an audience favorite is the lightning round, so let's get into that.
And this is, you're going to have to come up with quick answers, so there's no thinking it over here.
Yeah.
Okay?
For the audience, the candidates have been pre-briefed on most of these questions. May I have some quiet, please? Thank you very much. The candidates have been pre-briefed on these questions. They've had time to consider them. There are some questions that have come in from the audience in the last 2 hours that they haven't seen. The candidates have 3 choices. They can answer yes, no, or they can, being politicians, try to duck the question and put their sign down. Fair enough? All right, let's go with this. All right, start with a really easy one. Do you like really cute puppies? Let's see, I'd like to see all the, there we go, thank you very much. All right, have you attended, we're going to move pretty quickly here. The first section of these citizen questions are designed on qualifications that people have, and the second section we call passion issues. Many folks have asked questions about a particular topic that they care about, and we want to make sure that all of these get covered in a binary kind of way, up or down. Fair enough? Here we go. Background questions. Have you attended the public meetings of 4 or more of the city's boards? Example, HEP Board, PZAB, Climate Resilience. Next, have you been responsible for an organization with annual expenses more than $1 million? Have you led an organization with 20 or more members? Don't read along because they might change, okay? Have you had employment in which you managed more than 20 people that were paid by your organization? Do you have a 4-year college degree? Have you led a homeowners association that has more than 10 members? Do you have a graduate degree from a college or university? Do you hold any professional licenses or certifications? I would like feedback. Marlene, are we getting this? Thank you. Passion issues. In your first 60 days in office, will you introduce, champion, and vote for measures to, and there's a whole series here, make the mayor's job full-time, bar the mayor from holding outside employment, direct the city attorney to concede the redistricting lawsuit now in federal court, remove the money, tell the city attorney to not defend the lawsuit. Redistricting. Direct the city attorney to step down. Change the city charter to increase the number of commission districts from 5 to 7. Change the city charter to increase the number of commission districts from 5 to 9. Change the city charter to increase the number of commission districts from 5 to 11. Fund a measure to make the Vyrick Park swimming pool design deeper. Establish and fund a fully independent inspector general for the city of Miami. Establish nation-leading measures to enable and protect whistleblowers reporting city abuses. Make Miami's ordinances protecting our tree canopy the toughest in the nation. To prohibit upzoning or enhanced zoning that sidesteps the Miami 21 protections against building height near residential neighborhoods. Currently, there's a movement prohibit upzoning or enhanced zoning that sidesteps Miami 21. To reestablish and staff NET offices, Neighborhood Enhancement Team offices. To restore freebie service throughout the Grove. To require commission meetings to start on time. Yeah, I'll let you clap for that one. Will you ensure that our tree protection ordinances are fully enforced, fully staffed, and funded? Will you act to make our tree protection ordinances the strongest in the country? I think we did. To repeat, will you act to make our tree protection ordinances the strongest in the country? Will you pledge to expand the district's tree canopy 40% in your term, as has been advocated by experts? It's a big number. If a commissioner is found civilly or criminally liable in a trial, will you act to stop the city spending funds for outside legal counsel on the appeal? When a city official brings disrepute on the city or citizens of Miami, will you pledge to publicly and repeatedly call for their removal from public service until the matter is resolved? Will you cause to be published an organizational map of the city administration on its website, which doesn't exist? We'll see. We have 60 days. It's going to be fun. With the county and the state's elected representatives, will you create and fund an independent blue ribbon task force to detail specific actions to reduce and stop external commuter car traffic from passing through the residential neighborhoods? After coordinating with other governments, will you create and fund an independent blue ribbon task force and that details specific actions to reduce and stop external commuter car traffic from passing through residential neighborhoods? We all know what we're talking Will you require their recommendations to be funded and implemented? Would you prefer that the City Commission elections were partisan? Regarding the Coconut Grove Playhouse, would you support a proposal for a 700-seat playhouse? Regarding the Playhouse, would you support a proposal for a 300-seat playhouse? Regarding the Playhouse, would you support a proposal that preserves only the facade of the building? Will you publish the uses of your office's funds and those of city organizations which you control? If you control your own budget and the budgets of one of the CRAs or something, will you publish that information? You control it, right? Will you commit to protecting the environmentally sensitive areas of the Grove and Virginia Key from commercial development? Will you commit to expanding citizen access to recreation, such as buying private land to create more parks? Will you work exclusively for tangible local results in our district and not for national or social issues that are beyond the scope of the City Commission? Will you take the measures to provide sewers for all of Coconut Grove? Are you familiar with the relationship of the City of Miami to the C4 Group advocates for a C4 group that advocates for significant personal consumption changes? Are you familiar with that subject? And finally, are you thankful that this lightning round of questions is complete?
All right, that brings us to closing statements, and we have one more lightning round question. Will you forego your closing statements so we can get out of here sooner? No. All right. We've got a random order again, and Commissioner, you are first. You have 60 seconds for a closing statement.
I just want to thank you all for being here. I think that we have a great conversation, that we have a lot of fun actually doing this and making sure that we can actually communicate to your ideas. I invite you to come to my office if you have any type of concern. We have open office hours on Wednesdays. We have mobile offices all along the month. And I encourage you to invite the residents of District 2 to please come out and vote. It's such an important election for the city of Miami, and the top priority is to increase our voter engagement. So please make sure that we invite everyone to vote November 7th. I'll be glad to be reelected. I'm going to be your advocate for 4 more years and 4 more years. I'm here to stay. I'm here to create a better city of Miami for everyone.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Castro?
Well, I said in the beginning I wasn't much of a politician or a public speaker, and I kept my word. I think the issue is that I'm proud that I don't really know anybody in City Hall, and I'm proud that I'm not that I'm not accepting campaign donations. I personally think it's unethical, but that's a completely different topic. The bottom line is, I remember when the Grove said no to Home Depot, and it was built anyways. I remember when they said give it back. The Playhouse, it's still sitting there today. I see what's going on in Varick Park, and we still don't have bicycle lanes. The pattern is, everything you want, you don't get. And maybe it's because we're electing the wrong people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Castro. Mr. Pardo?
Yes, well, we don't get what we want because of the money brought in by the special interests. And I think we're at a pivotal point right now. I think we're at a very serious point in the history of Miami. We really need to look at the qualifications and the background of each of us candidates and make the best decision for the city. I don't think we need a commissioner that's on the payroll of a developer, nor do I think we need a commissioner whose coffers for the campaign are filled with special interest monies. I also don't think we need a commissioner that we elected and put on the dais to call out corruption. but instead has kind of fit right in. So I think I have worked here in this community for 35 years. I've proven my character, I've proven my hard work, I have financial skills and abilities, and I've been a transformational leader, and I would like to be your advocate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pardo. Mr. Torres?
Thank you. You have choices coming up on November 7th. I plan on being your commissioner with your support to get there. I've been the only candidate since February that has been at the forefront of advocating for the community and the entire district. I've been at countless PSAB board meetings addressing issues not just for downtown, but for the entire district. I've been the only one to call out individuals or a group of individuals on corruptions and scandals that have been happening within our city. I'm the one that's really rolling up my sleeves and moving forward and not thinking macro. These next 4 years are very important on many aspects, too many to name this evening. But I can tell you one thing that I will do, which is what I always have done. I will put community first, and it's an open door policy to bring you in because you voted me in. Vote James Torres on the 7th of November. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Torres. Ms. Tasker?
I am the candidate who actually stood in front of Joe Carollo and asked for his resignation. I am the candidate who already asked to put a lien on his property. I asked Tricky Vicky to step down. I am the only candidate on record at City Hall to face these politicians that are sitting behind and in chairs that they were supposedly elected to go in. While everybody else was standing outside, going on their social media, you will find Christy Tasker, the only one on record, calling out the corruption to their faces, also reporting them to the Department of Justice. I ask for your vote on November the 7th so that I can make the motions that Ms. Covo will not make.
Thank you, Ms. Tasker. Ms. Kosick?
Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. The biggest issue that I see, and I think everybody should keep in mind, the macro, is overdevelopment and the environment. If we do not scale back, if we do not have if we don't have overdevelopment discipline, if we do not have ethical discipline, everybody keeps talking about adding, doing this, that. I actually think we need to take a breath, because we will not have development. Developers are not going to want a stinky bay, a rotten piece of what. Nobody's going to come to build. So my biggest concern, and with my background in mindful development, historic preservation, shading initiatives, I have no fear of City Hall. That is the number one thing, or we will not have a Miami in 10 years, in 15 years.
Thank you, Ms. Kosick. Mr. Leal?
I'm going to stand up because I think I'm the last one, so I'll stretch my legs.
You are the last one.
So, residents of District 2, the choice is yours. It's a monumental choice. For the next, on November 7th, you select who sits on that seat for 4 years. I submit to you that if you want somebody that has knowledge, has capability, and has a proven track record that from a legal capacity has made a difference in this community, things that you might not even be aware of because of the way that the code is being written, vote for me. If you want to see the same thing that you've seen, don't worry, vote for the incumbent. But if you want real change, vote for me on November 7th. Thank you for your time and consideration this evening.
Great. Thank you to all the candidates. That's a wrap.
Let's thank the candidates, and let's also have a round of applause for our moderators, for the Women's Club of Coconut Grove, and for the many volunteers that made this evening possible. Thank you so much, everybody.